Right, item 1 on the agenda, to receive and accept apologies for absence.
Tina Cadell and Tina Cruz have both given apologies.
Can I ask, do we agree with Tina Cadell's apologies? Yeah. And Tina Cruz? Yeah, thank you. Item 2, to note declaration of members' personal, prejudicial and disclosable pecuniary interests in respect of items on the agenda. Has anybody got an interest? I will declare it for when we come to the Charlotte Harvey, because I've signed the forms. It's item 10. Thank you. Can't see down for it. And it's too hot. I'll declare an interest for item 10. Does anyone else want to? Okay. Going to have a slight change around on the agenda. As Tom from Reclaim the Rain has come, we've agreed to bring item 9 up before item 3. You come up from Ipswich, I believe, so we can hear. Tom, if you'd like to come down here. Thank you. And Liz, do you want to come down, or are you saying anything? We've got a spare. And this is Tom Mann, Senior Project Manager from Reclaim the Rain, and we're all ears.
Excellent. Yes, hello everybody. I'll just sort of wave hello so everybody can see me, and then I'll save you from having to stare for too long. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting me up here. Unfortunately, it was supposed to be my colleague Sean, who is Norfolk born and bred and knows all you guys much better than I do. But unfortunately he couldn't make it, so I'm standing in for him. But I think what I'll do in his absence is just do a very brief summary of who we are and what we're trying to achieve, why you guys are involved and what to expect in the future. So I'll keep this brief because Liz has assured me that she's shared this far and wide already. But Reclaim the Rain is a DEFRA and Environment Agency backed scheme where we're essentially looking to identify areas where there is risk of flooding and water scarcity. Too often what we find at the moment with the current way of managing flood risk is that it's very one-dimensional, and it means that you are only ever looking at water as a nuisance or as a damaging product. You don't ever find any value in water, and Reclaim the Rain is basically trying to say, well, look, we can manage flood risk and we can find a better use for that water. It's much more sustainable in the long run. It's a much better use of money. And we want to try and demonstrate to DEFRA that this is the way that we should be managing water in the future. Let's not just focus on flood risk or on water scarcity. It's all part of the same problem. Let's bring it together and try and deal with it together. So that's the sort of overarching elevator pitch for why we're doing what we're doing. The how of what we're trying to achieve is quite flexible at the moment. So we're quite aware that we have gone out into the community, and we've asked people for their support and their ideas, and do they want to work with us. Watton and Merton, we're very pleased to work with you guys, and we're really pleased that that you showed an interest and that there was that you thought that it was a valuable idea as we did. Alongside in Norfolk, the two other communities are Thompson and Watton. Thompson just being up the road, so I'm sure you guys will know them very well. In Suffolk, for what it's not particularly relevant to you guys, but we've got a small village called Friston, another one called Little Blakenham, and Oxford, which is sort of a larger village, small town. So we've got 6 sites across Norfolk and Suffolk where we want to try different ways of achieving that same goal, so different ways of managing water sustainably. That could be by looking upstream and looking at the whole hydrological catchment in its entirety, and looking at whether there's storage that we can introduce so that farmers could perhaps recharge their agricultural reservoirs for irrigation. It could be conservation, so that we create wetland habitat. Equally, it could be community use. We could be looking at water butts and and reuse of grey water within the community. At the moment, we're very, very open and flexible. We really want to be able to work with you guys and hear your ideas and where you think the value in that water is and what you think we should be doing with it. We have funding that's around about 6.5–7 million that covers the next 5 years to cover all of those 6 sites. So I'm reluctant to say it's £1 million a site. It's not quite that clear cut, unfortunately, but we're looking at a reasonably sizable investment per community. So the next steps going forward, like I say, because we're so flexible and because this is quite early days and we're looking to engage with the community, the next steps will be that predominantly Sean, who unfortunately couldn't make it, but Sean will be leading a number of sort of engagement events and workshops with members of the community, with yourselves, to try and understand where you think that value is and who you think we should be talking to. We're quite open and honest that right now, as things are, this is quite a different idea to what most local authorities do. Most county councils and district councils are not that aware of these challenges and how to resolve these issues. We know it's a challenge that we need to solve, and we know that those individuals and groups in the community are there willing to work with us. We just need to try and bring that all together. So in the next month, the next few weeks, hopefully Sean is going to be in contact to try and set up an initial meeting. This is not where we're quite realistic that we're not going to solve everything first time of asking. This is just about us getting some feet under the table, understanding who's who and where we need to be having those conversations and how to engage with Watton and Merton. Beyond that, we'd be looking over the next year to try and tease out who those key players are and really try to refine what it is that we actually deliver, what goes in the ground and what we spend the money on. And then that leaves us about 4 years for both installation and delivery, as well as allowing a little bit of time towards the end of the project where we can measure it and do some evaluation and collect some data. Ultimately, DEFRA wants evidence to demonstrate that this can be replicated elsewhere and that this is a valuable way of managing water. So we will be using Reclaim the Rain as a platform to make that happen. Sort of a blitz through who we are, what we're doing and what to expect. I'm willing to take any questions you may have, any concerns, any sort of thoughts you might have.
So I understand obviously that you're part of the project team, and I know there's going to be a working group set up. What does the project team kind of look like? How are they going to be working with the working groups that are going to be locally?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. So I keep mentioning him because he's going to be such a key player in this, but Sean will be sort of the figurehead in that. So he'll be we expect that he'll be the person who is driving the progress forward on that. So he'll be arranging all the meetings and liaising with any sort of landowners or community leaders or whoever it may be. We anticipate that the working group will meet reasonably regularly in order that you can share your thoughts and views and concerns over the course of the next 5 years. Sean will be the figurehead of that. We've also started recruitment. So just to give you an overview of what the project team looks like. So I'm Senior Project Manager with overview of both the Norfolk and Suffolk activities. Sean overlooks all of the Norfolk activities, and we have a lady called Ruby Shepperson who does equivalent job in Suffolk. Both Sean and Ruby will have assistant project managers as well to help them, because we're quite conscious that with all of the different conversations and all of the different working sort of groups that they're going to have underneath them is quite a lot to try and manage on your own. But Sean certainly will be the lead in that and will take responsibility for making sure that the money is spent and the progress is on track, and we collect all the evidence and data that we need to make it worthwhile. So he's the lead, but he's very much working within that group, not necessarily doing it for you.
Sorry, just one more question. And would it be, obviously there's going to be a number of different working groups, so would it be that information information is shared between those working groups, because it might be that obviously one area comes up with a good idea that obviously we could learn from.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the overall project governance structure will have a board, predominantly to make sure that the investment is used correctly, and there'll be project partners and community leaders that form part of that board with the overall sort of cloud with decision-making responsibility. We'll also have a project forum, which is pretty much what you've just described, where all of the good ideas and all of the sort of, enthusiasm that we're already seeing from across the different communities can come together and begin to share those ideas. And something that we've seen already is that we'll come along with, what Reclaim the Rain wants to do, and it gets people's sort of minds going, and they come up with a brilliant idea, which is, admirable and fantastic, might not necessarily suit Reclaim the Rain perfectly, but that's not to say that there's not value in it. And I think that's where the project forum is going to be at its best, is allowing people to come together with those sorts of weird and wonderful ideas and share ideas.
The money, the figures you talked about at the beginning, does that cover your salary and everybody else's salary as well? So once you take the paid officials out, you've got a sum of money that's left over for everyone to work on. Now, when these various projects come together, is it going to be like every other project we've ever seen, where you put a bid in and you wait to find out whether it's accepted or not? Or do you say, yeah, great, just go on with it? So, does it turn out to be a bidding process in the end?
I think the straight answer to that at the moment is that it depends on the level of interest. So if we get a huge amount of interest from schemes which have all got a lot of value but are all quite expensive, it's going to be up to the working group and Sean to establish how we use that funding. It's a reasonably sizable amount of money that we've been given pretty much up front to go off. We've got a lot of flexibility within that, but we are conscious, first of all, prices have risen very quickly in the last year, certainly more than when we initially put the bid in. And that money is finite once it's gone. It's a finite project price. But we want to make sure that the community has the say on where that investment goes, which is why that project working group is such an important part of Reclaim the Rain system. It's not about the county council turning up and saying, well, you must spend this money there. That's not what we're trying to achieve, and that's not how we're going to be successful. How we're successful is by putting that opportunity towards within the community, so that we can demonstrate that despite what the county councils may think, despite what DEFRA thinks, we can still drive benefit that has all of these different strands, different positives that come off it, and make best use of flood risk management funding rather than just being too narrow. So I think there's a bit, on one hand, that's a bit of a cop-out answer because I can't tell you, but what I can tell you is that the response that it's not just going to be us wagging a finger at you. It's something that you're actively in that conversation.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Charlotte.
Sorry, just one last question. I was going to say, I know that there's going to be the workshop set up for July or August. I'm not sure whether you've had many people come forward that want to attend that. I was just going to say, if we haven't had anyone come forward for it, whether we could advertise Reclaim the Rain and that workshop on our local Facebook sites and get out on social media, because I haven't seen anything. And just from speaking to people that I know that live locally, they're not aware of the project so far.
Yeah, no, excellent point. Yeah, that's a brilliant point. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to catch up with Sean today because I've been in recruitment interviews all day long. But I know that is something that he's quite keen on doing, is sort of identifying who's going to be around the table, and I'll pass that on to him because I think that's a good idea.
Yes.
So far, I've sent emails to all the people who expressed interest originally, 3 residents have responded positively that they would like to be involved. I also happen to be at an event at the community centre in the High Street on Saturday, and I'm probably going to do a presentation to the U3A and perhaps the inner wheel, and that's another way to get the word out. And you're quite right, we need to get the word out, and if we can do something on Facebook and posters and whatever, that's what we need to do for sure.
Thank you, Liz. Sorry, Keith.
I think I assume that these workshops or the initial meetings and that will be public meetings. And if so, will they be at the Queen's Hall, which is our central hall where people will turn up to? A bit like when we started our neighbourhood plan. We had public meetings where people turned up, just walked in, and we had a good attendance. And out of that came the group that we are now.
Yeah. So I think what we're aiming for is to get to that point. I think to start off with, it could be quite difficult for us to mediate a very large workshop at the first sort of point of contact. I think what we're hoping to do is start with a slightly smaller, more focused group and build up. So with the view to making sure that we connect with as many people, like you just said, as many people as we can. Just start with 1 hour, just to try and keep that nice and focused and nice and tight, so that we are really on track with making sure that we're getting through the points that we need to get through. Predominantly figuring out who the key people in the community and around the catchment are. But that is the goal: is to be able to engage with lots of people in the community. Spread that word a bit wider, so that we've got the opportunity to figure out what the best way to sustainably manage water is. Like I say, I don't think we would do that first, just purely to make it manageable and keep it on track as tight as possible to begin with.
So there has already been, when it was posted about that we got this funding and everything, that there was a thread on one of the social media pages, and it was some ideas being thrown out there, like every house should have a water button, all these sort of things. So I think word is out there, but not very widely spread yet. So I think the sooner we can go out to a wider audience, the better. I take on board what you're saying. Let's get together a small group first and decide the way forward from that. And I think there should be a lot of interest out there.
I hope so.
Thank you, Keith. Stan.
Thank you. As you expressed here, is that something that other funding could be used for, whether that's for legal bits and moving on to increase their values, but break our purchases? Is that something that the project is financially?
It is, yeah. It's actually something we have already dabbled with a little bit. So we knew when we were first notified that we had been successful in winning funding, it was sort of like this moment of, oh yeah, brilliant. Oh Christ, now where am I going to go and work? So it was this. When you look at the website, we've got this fancy branding. It's got a very clear visual identity. It's different from either Suffolk or Norfolk County Council. It's all very intentional in order to do what you've just described, and to go out and engage with people and sort of make it attractive and distinctive. And we used social media to spread the initial news release and spread some targeted marketing adverts, basically, with great success. We know that works. We know that the content that we've produced really does engage people. I think that if that first workshop does anything, if it can give us some parameters to work by, to aim at within that area, that will be really successful, because then that will mean do exactly what you've just described and start to sort of funnel it out so that more people are involved. But yes, that's yeah.
Liz.
I know that Jane the Clerk sent out a short paper I did to just update you on things. And one of the things that the council, I was asking the council, who are very much a partner and very much engaged, was to have a lead councillor and maybe one or two others. I mean, Keith will probably be there because of being in the flood group, but if we had a lead councillor and maybe a couple of others, and then committed residents, and that the job of that committee, as it were, workshop group that will start, is to be driving the thing forward with Sean. That's how I'm kind of seeing it, and I hope that's how you would see it too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Can I make a suggestion? Because it was originally on there about a lead councillor, but now we've heard from Tom and Liz a little bit more information, that while we're going through the agenda, if we can all think whether we would be something that we're interested in, and if anyone would like to volunteer, unless there's a volunteer straight away. There we go, we've got one.
I nominate Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte. So you have your lead councillor, which would be Charlotte. I would imagine you'll liaise through the office, Jane, and then
Yes.
yeah. And if anyone else wants to get involved, then again, contact Charlotte as lead councillor, and then once the meetings are arranged, they can come along as well.
That's everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got any other questions at all? Yes, Jane.
I only just wanted to comment, the agenda talks about whether we should have a joint working group with the emergency plan that we were working on with the Reclaim the Rain. And we hadn't covered that as to whether we should or we shouldn't.
No,
The general feeling I've got from the drainage flood people is that they don't want that because they are completely, one is for civil contingencies really, but it's on the agenda as that.
it is, in Liz's report, it's been put that it would be better to separate the two, and I think that's advisable, which is why Charlotte's kindly offered to lead that, so it will be totally separate.
Two separate working groups.
If you want to be a member of both groups, there's nothing to stop you, but ultimately, if it's a Reclaim the Rain group, that's what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, well, the Reclaim the Rain will
Emergencies.
inform the emergency planning,
Yeah.
but they are slightly different animals. Thank you.
Okay. Keith?
I'd like to back that up because they are two totally different things. Reclaim the Rain is about preventing the emergency. The emergency could be an aircraft crashing on the town somewhere, a big fire somewhere. We had one in the High Street a little while ago. That could be an emergency if it gets out of hand. Another one could be, and I hope there's no animal welfare people listening, they hijack a pig lorry in the middle of the High Street and let all the pigs loose. Now that would be an emergency. There are all sorts of emergencies which will pick up when the emergency happens. Reclaim the Rain is bringing into the work which, as the flood group, we've discovered problems and how to prevent the emergency in the first place. Two totally different things.
Right, at this stage, and I'd like to thank Tom for coming. Oh, sorry, Catherine.
So you know what I'm like, just a matter of, for the record, can we take a vote that we're not going to combine the two groups, and it's quite clear. So I propose that the two groups are merged.
Okay, seconded. All those in favour? Okay, two separate groups.
Yeah, I just, on that point, actually, last week, we contacted Department for Education about that exact point, and they're very keen that we find a way. We wanted to do it anyway, but they're very keen. So we're actively working on that. A few of our different communities have got schools that have got a similar desire. So yes, that's on the ticket.
So bring this part to a close. I'd like to thank you, Tom, for coming up and explaining it all to us, and for Liz for all the hard work and arranging everything for us. So, thank you. Right, so we now go on to item 3.1, to confirm that the minutes of the meeting held on June the 28th, 2022 are a true and accurate record. Is everybody happy with the minutes? Item 3.2, to receive a report on items from the last minutes not already on the agenda.
I don't think there was too much to add to this time. The one thing, the public toilets, Keith and I did meet a rep Monday, I think it was, Keith, wasn't it? So we had a look round. I'm waiting for him to come back with me for some quotes, really just to do a refurb. And I think looking at it, I had ideas of perhaps changing it. So we'd got 3 sort of unisex changing facilities almost. Perhaps that's not needed at the moment, and the toilets are in refurb as quickly as possible, perhaps, although they're looking much better since we've had a different cleaner in place. So that's going to be coming back probably to finance when I get the quote through and see where we need to go next with that.
Thank you. Item 4.1, Chairman's report. Just got to find it. On the 29th of June, we attended the 48th Fighter Wing Change of Command, RAF Lakenheath. On the 1st of July, we attended the beating of the retreat hosted by the Royal Anglian Regiment at Langley School, Norwich. On the 7th of July, I attended the 95th birthday celebrations of the Methodist Church in Watton. And on the 9th of July, I attended the rededication of the Methodist Centre, which was attended by Baroness Shepherd. And item 4.2, Vice Chairman's report.
Thank you, Chair. 3rd of July, I deputised for the Mayor at the Wreath Laying Memorial for the Desert Rats.
4.3, Clerk's report.
In the agenda pack, I've noted that the clerk, myself and the deputy clerk, attended the Norfolk Association of Local Councils seminar. It was actually quite an interesting day. We weren't quite sure how it would go, but there were some points raised that we will put a written report together for you for the next meeting. The one thing that did come out of that was the thought of next year's elections, and perhaps to ask people, are you going to be standing next year? Because we do need to start planning, I think, in case we don't have a full council. So that's something to think about, please, and we'll get back to that. Other than that, I don't think we've got anything else to add that isn't on the agenda. GDPR training we've put in for the 4th of October, so save that date if you can, please. But we'll give you a reminder of that nearer the time, and perhaps plan the evening, Stan. We thought it was quite a long session, so whether we need 2 sessions, but we'll see nearer the time. Half 6 to half 9 or something like that, and then Michelle and I looked at it and thought, wow, that's actually quite a long while. But
Section 5 is public participation. Got one member of the public here. Was there anything you wanted to say to the council? No. Okay, so we go on to item 6. To receive update on High Street improvement works, including planning permitted for class changes. And you've got a nice sheet in front of you. And I'm hoping that Jane's going to take over with this.
Have you got any other updates to give, Jane?
I think Charlotte was perhaps wanted this on the agenda just to sort of see where we are, and I think we did have a report from Tina Cadell as district councillor and sort of follow up more or less saying the same from one of the officers as well. So that's sort of as much information as I've got.
Yeah, the reason I asked for that to be deferred and put back on the agenda was because I was a little concerned about the response from Brecton District Council. And Rob Walker's response said, no planning enforcement action can be taken against the premises being used for retail oblique storage as it falls within permitted use class order. That means that the current use is permitted as the use categories are broadly defined. Now, I'd like to challenge that statement on a number of grounds, but to help understand it, I thought a little bit of background might help. So I found this guide which helps. The use class order was changed last year. Originally, every piece of land in the country is divided into uses, and they were given from A1 to A2, B, C, etc., etc. A was always shops. September last year it changed, and that is now Class E, which gives you a shop. So if you've got a shop, a commercial business, there's slight changes in the way that they work, but it still should be a shop. Now, if you have a business use of any sort, it always has an automatic caveat that you get an ancillary use with it. So say, for instance, you've got a shop which is an open area, and you decide that you don't need so much floor space in your shop, but you need some storage at the back and a staff toilet built. Those will be ancillary to the shop use. So you wouldn't need planning permission, you'd need building regs, but you wouldn't need planning permission because it's not changing the use, they are facilitating the use. So that's when they say something's ancillary, that's what they mean. And storage is acceptable in a retail unit, provided it's ancillary to that use. And that is where I differ from Brecton's interpretation on this, in that I believe it has to actually be a shop. And a shop is defined as a place one goes to purchase items. Nobody can go in it because it's never open. So I don't see where the B8 comes in and the storage comes in. And if you look down the use classes order, you will see quite clearly that it's a B8 use, I think it is now. Storage, is it B8? Yeah, B8 use, general process, other than one falling within the use. Storage and distribution, B8. Now that can turn to a dwelling house, but that's not irrelevant in this case. I can't see that an E use, a Class E use and a Class B use are loose interpretations. That doesn't ring true with me. This place has never been open, and I think other councillors have seen it. Yes.
Is there a minimum amount of hours that they have to be open to be classed as a shop?
No, but they do have to actually sell something, I think.
Do you know it was open on the antiques fair?
Yes, I do know it was open on that day. But what one has to look at is a material change of use. Anything that's judged in planning terms, they look at material changes. So if, for instance, I live in a dwelling house and I want to do a business use there, I might be able to do that 2 or 3 days a year and get away with it because it's not material. Whereas if it's a shop and it's closed for 3 or 4 days a month, that would be immaterial. But if it's only open for 4 days a year, then I don't see that materiality applies in that case. And I would say that there's case law to support that. So that's the line that I'm thinking along, but to say that I want to challenge it. And the reasons that I've listed down I want to challenge it is, it was not originally a complaint about a retail use, it was a complaint about non-retail use. And only related to storage is that it's never opened as a proper shop. I've seen it open 3 days since I've been looking at the place, and that's not a lot in 2 years. And that's post-COVID. So the second one is the old use class order. It was an A use, it's now an E use. Shop rather than for sale for other than the sale of hot food. It's not a broad definition. Storage and distribution are classed as B8. There is no permitted right under the new Class E to move to a B8 use, which is what I believe they've done. And then 3, while it's understood that storage will be an ancillary element for a shop, this assumes that the shop is in operation. And the definition of a shop is a place to buy things at. The site is not operated as a shop, but is used to store and house a distribution centre at best. And those are the reasons I would like to challenge it. But it's up to you whether you believe that's the right thing to do. You want me to challenge it?
So has anyone got any comments on that?
Peter?
I haven't got a problem with that. The challenge will be on behalf of Watton Town Council.
Yes,
So it will go on Watton Town Council headed paper,
yes.
signed by you or by the mayor.
I have no idea.
Well, I mean, I just want it to be as formal as possible when it goes
Yeah.
to Brecon, so that I would suggest the mayor signs it, purely from the point of view, as a councillor, they're just so as a councillor, and
Yeah.
ignore it.
Okay.
Yes, Keith.
Yeah, I think anything like this, if it's on behalf of the council, should be signed by the chairman of the council and the clerk as a responsible officer. I think they both need to sign it.
Yes, Catherine.
I was just wondering, as Jane's been very helpful in putting the wording together, whether Jane could be on the letter as lead counsellor for planning.
I think that's a good idea.
Perfectly happy with that, yeah.
If they come back with queries, then
Yeah.
we can direct to you.
And there was just a note, it sort of that came to my attention when I was going through all of this. It's worth noting that this new use classes order, you used to have to require planning permission to change a shop to a house. You don't no longer require planning permission. You can put it through as a prior approval. So that means that you don't need planning permission to turn a shop into a house, and you don't need to turn it into flats, and you don't need to turn it into a mixed use as a shop and a flat. So I find that intriguing when they're telling us they all want to look after our high streets. Prior approval means that you submit a detail saying that you're going to do this, and then the district council has to, as it were, call it in within a certain amount of time. If they don't succeed in calling that in for a planning application within that time, that's it, you can carry on. So we really need to keep our eye on that.
Yes, Beryl.
I find that extremely interesting, since we just had to put planning permission in to convert what was the dry cleaners to a flat.
Yeah, you did it just before the rules changed. I know, Mickey, yes.
Hundreds of pounds of money.
And it was not mentioned at all in the consultant document. So I just thought people would find that interesting because I hadn't seen it before. So thank you for your time.
So can I just ask for clarity there? Is there a proposal to write to Breckland? Miss Catherine? Seconded. All those in favour? Okay. Would it be right to leave Jane and Jane to sort that out, and then we sign it all? Thank you.
Yeah, what I was kind of hoping was for a response from Rob Walker to see if he had any further update for us, but I don't believe we've got that. But as we're on the high street anyway, just to mention about the lampposts, I know from our last meeting it was said that they can't give us a date, which I find not great. But anyway, I just would like them to give us some kind of rough estimate. Like surely they can give us a date that is going to be done by. I know they can't pin us, give us an exact date, but I'd like to think, is it going to be done within 6 months? Is it going to be done within 3 months? Some kind of time scale I think we should be given. So I don't know whether we can go back to them regarding that.
I'm happy to go back to them, Charlotte. I think this has been going on for the last 3 years. It's been this year. The latest, it was going to be April this year. They've given us that date. Obviously, that's gone again. And that was the latest when I went back. They did say we can't give any date other than it's scheduled to be done. I mean, I can go back and ask again. But it's not been, adhered to anyway, and every time we have asked.
I just want to kind of pin them down, because otherwise we could be sitting there in 2 years' time and they're still not painted, and that's not really acceptable.
Thank you.
Perhaps we should say to them, Chair, that if they don't paint it, we'll paint it. That'll upset them because they won't want us touching their lampposts. Well, there we go.
Right, item 7, to review communications social media policy. Over to you, Stan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, you would have been sent out the draft document for the IT and communications policy and social media policy. Little confession time, I lost that document for 4 days somewhere within the crypts of my own computer and only recovered it yesterday morning. So it got circulated to the clerk on hurry up. The clerk has identified a number of fundamental amendments that need making. So what I'd like to say to you, councillors, is if you have read it already, well done. If you haven't, press delete. I'll speak with the clerk. We'll work on the fundamental amendments and then get it circulated to councillors prior to taking it to I think it's a suggestion. I don't think we've got it chiselled in stone, have we, Jane? To the clerk feels that, and I'm speaking on your behalf, that it might be appropriate to put the draft document in front of the HR committee before bringing it to council for approval, for a number of reasons, because much of the content is HR related, and it will whittle down the approval process. So if councillors are content with that explanation, I would ask the chair to move on from this tonight. Thank you.
Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Okay. Item 8, to consider annual contribution to the Queen's Hall for regular use of railings for event banners. Yes, Beryl. Anyone, any other questions on that? Yes, Catherine.
What sort of amount are we talking about, Beryl?
£100. £100 for up to 10 banners a year, so it's £10 a banner. No, and it's very prominent as well where it is. So, all those in favour? Yeah. Okay. Item 9 we've already done. So item 10, to consider donation application received from the Charlotte Harvey Trust. Having attended, I think was everybody at the Charlotte Harvey? Has anyone got any queries on the donation paperwork that's gone through? Yes, Catherine.
I was going to propose that we accept the donation.
Second. All those in favour? That's accepted then, Jane. And then back over to Jane for planning, please.
My usual declaration, please.
Noted.
You can.
And we've not got a lot tonight. The first one, 11.1, is 3PL 2022-0722 HOU, repositioning of a 2-metre high timber fence, 10 Mallard Road. I don't know what everybody else thinks. These are my bet. Well, I hate them on these estates. They're all designed open plan so that they have the nice spacious feeling, and then everyone buys them and moves their fences out, and it ends up like a tunnel. I like to complain about them. I know I'm banging my head against a brick wall, but I would like to make an objection if anybody's got anything else they want to say. And anyone got anything they want to say on it?
On what grounds would you object on that,
Well,
Jane?
My objection would be the layout of the fences and boundary walls on the estate were designed to provide an open feeling along roadways and footpaths. The proposal compromises this design feature and creates a tunnel effect on the adjacent footpath.
I do remember that there was one on one of the Able estates that wanted to move their fence out, and that was refused, so I don't know.
But on Mallard, they have given a couple, but this is going right against the side of the footpath, which is just as you're walking through it, feels you're enclosed and people will be less likely to use it at night because it feels, you know, I dislike them when they do it. So I just think it's worth the chance of posing it.
It's their land.
It is their land, but when you buy the properties, you know that your walls are in those locations and you'll need planning permission. And the reason you like the estate is because it looks open and feels welcoming and friendly. And then you move in and put like fortress walls up everywhere and it just spoils it for everybody. They all come to cul-de-sacs at the end, but it's the access to the rest of the estate that it gives. You have to walk through that. So if you were coming from your friend's house, you've got to walk down there at 9 o'clock at night in the middle of the winter. You've got a fence there and anyone can be behind that back part of the fence. And because it's open now, there isn't anything there to obscure your view. You can see the distance. And that's why I don't like them being taken out. So it's up to you. If you want me to make that objection, I will. If you don't, I won't.
Ask those in favour of making the objection.
Thank you. Well, we go on to the next two. Now, I'm going to do these two together because they are the same thing in effect. 11.2, 3PL 2022-0717A. That's the adverts which are going to be shown on the hub that they're talking about. And 11.3, 3PL 2022-0718F. We knew this was coming in because they had mentioned it on the Market Town Initiative. Basically, it's the new phone boxes as they're going to be. But there is a slight problem with this. We did worry that it was going to be in the wrong place, it might affect our public use of Chaston Place, but it isn't. It's going to be on the roadside. It's going to be in between where the two planters are, so it wouldn't affect our use of Chaston Place. But the problem is that the proposal is to remove the existing BT phone box and install a replacement BT street hub. But there isn't a phone box there. There never was a phone box there. The phone box was across the road outside the old post office next to the bus shelter over there. So there should be no services here. So I don't know whether that will affect their ability to do it. So, the application gives us a problem with that. I mean, in principle, I think we would support it. It's a good idea. And you can do 999. It's interactive. You get Wi-Fi on it, all sorts of things, and you can put adverts on it. They will put adverts and get money, which I don't have a problem with. But the problem is this not being able to connect it up because the services are on the other side of the road. And I don't know whether, I think it was all done by a desktop survey. And they've looked at the road and they've seen the bus shelter and assumed that it was there, which it wasn't. So what I thought I would do is say that we'd support it in principle, but there could be problems because it's not actually got the services attached because there was no BT telephone box that was on the other side of the road. And just let them know that and leave it in their hands. I suspect they'll do an amended application because of that. Would everyone be happy with that approach? Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Item 12, to pass a resolution to exclude the press and public to consider cemetery matters. It's at this stage that I'd ask you to leave the council offices. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Hope you found it informative.